Good morning in Germany, konnichiwa in Japan. Welcome to this GJETC Outreach event. I am Johanna Schilling, Managing Director of ECOS, and ECOS is also the organizational secretariat of the German-Japanese Energy Transition Council. I'm honored to guide you through our today's event. And let's just have a quick look on the agenda. We will start after the welcome words. We will start with the first part, which will introduce one of the two studies, which is on the agenda today. It's about electricity market design. So the results will be presented, and after that you will all have the chance to give your comments or questions. Then we'll have a short break, and after that the second study will be presented, which deals with the effective or the more effective governance of energy efficiency policies in both countries. So we have a lot on the agenda today. It's quite complex studies. We hope we'll be in time and finish after 2 hours. If you just want to hear about the first part, don't hesitate to leave us after the first part. That's no problem, of course, but we are very happy that you are with us today. Now, without further ado, I would like to hand over to Stefan and ask him for his welcome remarks on behalf of the two co-chairs, actually, of the German-Japanese Energy Transition Council. Please, Stefan.
Thank you, Johanna, and very warm welcome to all participants also from my side. As Johanna said, my Japanese co-chair, Tatsuya Terasawa, is not able to join us today, unfortunately, so I have the honor to welcome you on behalf of both of us. Both countries, Japan and Germany, have are part of the UNFCCC, and the UNFCCC has decided to triple the capacity of renewable energies and to double the rate of energy efficiency improvements by the year 2030 worldwide. So this is not immediately an objective for both countries for themselves, but a commitment to contribute to it. And so the two studies that we are presenting today, and which we have implemented and developed during the last year of the cooperation, are both very touching very important subjects in relation to these targets. And the first one, energy market design, is important because in both countries the share of renewable energies in power generation is set to increase. And this is particularly the fluctuating solar and wind power. And this means that the power generation in general has to become more flexible, and power markets need more flexibility. And also there is the expectation of grid constraints increasing, and these can also be tackled by flexibility resources. And so there is a need to discuss and then to implement additional policy instruments in the electricity market design to support the development and especially the investment in such flexibility resources. The second study is also very important because it touches the other goal of doubling the rate of energy efficiency improvements. And here both countries, of course, have a long history of effective policy making in harnessing the energy efficiency potentials. But both have also seen that it has so far not been possible to harness all of the potential. And this is why we came to the conclusion that we should take a closer look at the overarching energy efficiency governance, how the implementation and the monitoring and the development, the enhancement of energy efficiency, single energy efficiency policies could be improved by also enhanced energy efficiency governance frameworks. And then we looked at the industry sector as an example. So I'm looking forward to presentations from the study teams and also comments from council members or members of IEJ. And then also to your questions and comments from the participants in the general discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stefan. So we look back to, well, about 9 months, I'd say, of work of the GJETC. We had council meetings, we had scoping workshops, and this is the result which we are presenting today, the 2 main studies of this, the current working phase. So let us get started with the presentation of the results of the first study, which I will share with you right now. Right. And I welcome, well, besides Stefan Thomas, who is going to present the study results, we welcome Mitsuaki Ota, who is senior researcher in the Electric Power Group at the Institute of Energy Economics in Japan. And just as a background explanation, the Institute of Energy Economics is our project partner, in this GJETC, and is the secretariat of the GJETC in Japan on the Japanese side. And Ota-san is member of the study team who worked on this electricity market design study. So together with Stefan, you both are going to present us the study. So please, the floor is yours.
So my name is Mitsuaki Ota from IEJ, in charge of study 1. So I and Mr. Stefan would like to report on the research result of study 1. So next slide, please. So this slide and the next slide shows a table of contents of the final report in our study. And so I will proceed with the presentation following the table of contents. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the potential topic for studying our study. So originally, various topics were proposed, such as support scheme for renewables and also the reform of the wholesale market. In the end, we selected the second B, flexible power plants, and second C, non-fossil fuel flexibility options. This is because it is important to ensure flexibility, especially decarbonized flexibility, as renewable are significantly expanded to achieve carbon neutrality in both countries. So next slide, please. Then this slide shows the definition of the flexibility according to the Euroelectric in 2014. The first portfolio optimization refers to the power producers and retailers procuring electricity from the market to meet their demand and supply before the gate closes. Second, balancing refers to the procuring flexibility through the balancing market in response to the grid congestion at the transmission level. And third, management of network constraints refers to congestion management in the distribution level in response to the expansion of renewables. So the next slide, please. So then this table shows the type of flexibility resources that policies options are expected to promote investments. On the left, flexible low carbon power plants includes hydrogen power plants, gas power plants ready to be converted to hydrogen and ammonia, and also the flexible use of biomass power plants. On the right, other flexibility option includes small scale resources such as demand response, batteries, and water electrolysis. In addition, although they are not used as a flexibility in Japan, CHP and heat pump and cold storage are also proposed. The next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next, please.
Sorry,
So,
yeah, that is. I think it was my turn to present on the general reform options. So yeah, so after we identified the subject of investment in flexibility resources as the focus of the study, and had discussed various flexibility resources that are available and their relevance for both countries. The focus was on potential reform options to stimulate investment in flexibilities. And for the flexible low carbon power plants, these are either specific capacity instruments or reserve assets or capacity markets. For the other flexibility resources such as demand response and storage, there is a broad array of potential direct support or regulation, which also includes capacity markets, but also other options. Next slide, please. But also lots of indirect support or regulation, mainly through prices, but also supporting the rollout or mandating the rollout of smart meters or sub-meters, because they are a necessary precondition for many of the demand side flexibilities. Next slide, please. So after some screening of the relevance in both countries, we decided to focus on 6 reform options for the further analysis, which are 3 types of capacity markets. First, the uniform capacity market with a uniform price for new and existing assets. Second, with the differentiated conditions between new and existing assets, but with a uniform price for each of new and existing. And third, specific capacity markets with differentiated products. And I'll come to that a bit later. The fourth is other specific capacity instruments like fixed payments for demand response or government grants for batteries or V2G systems, vehicle to grid systems. And then we looked at 2 further reform options, which are more focused on demand side response and storage. One looking at the revenue regulation of system operators, and the other one on the pricing instruments. So next, please. The option 1, the uniform capacity instruments with a uniform price, are able to support especially existing flexible power sources and flexibility resources to ensure that the capacity is matching the demand in a situation where otherwise the market price in the energy-only market may not be able to secure maintenance of of existing or creation of new capacity. So it needs, of course, an assessment from an independent organization of the amount of capacity needed. And then there will be auctions for this capacity. Because these auctions are mainly annual, these contracts may not be sufficient, however, to stimulate investment in new resources. Next, please. So there is especially the option 3 is more focused on generating sufficient incentives for investments in new resources. And the advantage of option 3 here is that it's more effective for investment in innovative technologies. And there can be several types, like caps on the different types of technologies, or even separate auctions, or multipliers, that is premium factors for multiplier factors for different types of non-fossil flexibility resources such as demand response or storage. Next, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Then there is the option that the regulator allows the future cost of flexibilities in the regulated tariffs of transmission or distribution system operators, which would embed the energy efficiency first principle into the planning and operation of these system operators. And so they also need to be able to recover the costs, because these are additional costs to the normal operation of the systems. And so this may be very effective for managing network constraints, because it directly stimulates investments either in own flexibility resources such as storage of these system operators, or proactive use of flexibilities of third parties like demand side storage and demand side response. Next, please. And especially these demand side options resources would be incentivized indirectly through energy or grid prices, so making power prices or grid fees, and possibly even taxes and levies time dependent, so time of use rates, or even dynamic, also called real-time pricing, can be important options to stimulate these demand-side flexibility resources. But they also, of course, need smart meters as a precondition. Next, please. So over to Mitsuaki-san, please.
So this slide shows the status of 6 reform options implemented in Japan. Regarding option 1, the capacity market auction started in 2020. And regarding option 3, a long-term decarbonized power source auction has been ongoing since January 2024. Next slide, please. Regarding other option in Japan, it has not been introduced or only partially discussed. Next slide, please. So from this slide, let me briefly touch on the capacity market in Japan. Let me briefly explain about the long-term decarbonized power source auction. So this slide shows the background in the long-term decarbonized power source auction. So as I said, we have introduced a capacity market, but the prospect of long-term investment recovery is uncertain due to the full liberalization and the one-year contract. Because in the current capacity market mechanism, there are challenges such as only 1-year capacity contract, and so there are concerns that investment in the power plants, which requires long construction periods and large amount of investment, will stagnate. So in order to ensure the predictability for power generation companies, encourage active investment in decarbonized power plants, long-term decarbonized power auction it has been considered. So at the same time, in order to achieve carbon neutrality, it is necessary not only to replace thermal power generation with decarbonized power sources, but also to invest in new and replacement of decarbonized power plants. Next slide, please. This slide shows the overview of long-term decarbonized power source auction. The first auction were held in January 2024 this year, and the results were announced at the end of the April. So this auction targets new installation and replacements of decarbonized resources such as renewables, hydrogen, ammonia, batteries, pump storage, and nuclear, as well as the renovation of existing thermal power plants into decarbonized power plants. So successful bidders will receive a fixed cost, including construction costs, operation and maintenance cost, capital cost for 20 years. And unlike the capacity market, because in the capacity market, the auction is held 4 years before the actual supply demand. But this auction takes into account the construction lead times and allows individual power plants to set startup dates. And according to the result of the first auction, the contract capacity was about 4 gigawatt, and in particular, the capacity for storage, battery, and pump storage accounts for about 1.7 gigawatt, which exceeds the upper limit of 1 gigawatt. Next slide, please. But this slide shows the challenges of the long-term decarbonized power source auction. So as I said, this auction ensures the fixed cost, but variable cost revenue comes from the other markets. So as for the variable cost, if there is no cap, power generation companies may be able to earn any amount of additional income. So therefore, this auction requires a refund. In particular, 90% of the profit from the other markets will be refunded later, but there will be no compensation for losses. So this condition of 90% refund or profits make the system unattractive for some power plants. Next, now I will hand over the presentation, Mr. Stefan again.
Yeah, in Germany, so far we do not yet have a capacity market of either option 1, 2, or 3, but in February this year, the German government announced that it will introduce a capacity market in 2028 to replace other specific capacity options, option 4 type, that traditionally have been used in Germany. It's not clear yet what will be the option chosen, but we expect that it will focus on new capacity, so probably be of the option 3 type, maybe in combination with option 1 for securing some of the existing capacities as reserves. So many experts also support this option as in order to replace the other specific capacity instruments that we had. So next slide, please. As you can see here in the left column, there's lots of technology-specific instruments so far in Germany for power plants, but also for demand response and storage. And some further are planned in the transition period to the capacity market in 2028. For the option 5, it has not yet been installed in Germany, although the preconditions would exist. But recent changes in the EU electricity market reform and also energy efficiency directive will require Germany to introduce this option in the next 2 years. And for option 6, there is first legislation both for the energy market that dynamic prices must be offered to customers who have a smart meter, and that also time variable grid fees have to be offered to owners of heat pumps and battery electric vehicles also from next year. But we're not aware of further plans by the German federal government at this stage. Next, please. So comparing Japan and Germany, we see that Japan has focused more on the capacity markets already, whereas Germany has so far not yet discussed a lot, but has now started and is set to introduce capacity market probably of option 3 in 2028. Next, please. Whereas the options 4 to 6 are not existing or not being discussed yet in Japan, although this may change in the future with increasing shares of renewable energies, whereas Germany now is this year already at 60%, is aiming for 80% of renewables in 2030. So the options 5 and 6 are highly discussed and as I said, partially implemented or need to be implemented soon. And the option 4 is highly discussed because policy and experts want to replace it by other options. Next, please. So over to Mitsuaki-san again.
Yes, so this slide shows the power generation mix as a background for the final summary and policy recommendations. So in October 2020, Japan announced the carbon neutrality target by 2050. And as of 2019, the renewable power generation accounts for about 80% of the power generation mix. Then the 6 basic energy plan announced in 2021 aims for 36 to 38% of renewables by 2030. In addition, as a reference scenario, the share of renewable by 2050 is expected to be 50 to 60%. Next slide, please. And this slide shows the final summary and policy recommendation. So electricity industry in Japan has more focused on competition since the full liberalization in 2016. However, in recent years, as carbon neutral target become important policy issues, so the expansion of renewable is expected to accelerate further. At the same time, with the increase of feed-in tariff power plants with low marginal costs into the wholesale market, the capacity of thermal power plants has been decreasing. So this highlights the need to secure the balancing capacity, particularly for the decarbonized flexibility. However, within the framework of the free competition, it is not necessarily possible to systematically procure the necessary supply. Therefore, the government support is very important to facilitate the investment. So Japan has already launched measures such as capacity market and long-term decarbonized power source auction. So these policy options are expected to systematically secure the decarbonized balancing power sources towards carbon neutrality. So next slide, please.
Yeah, for Germany, as I said, the target is to achieve 80% of renewables in power generation in 2030 and 100% before 2045. You see here that in 2045, expected that wind and solar power will produce about 80% of our demand. Next, please. So the policy recommendations for Germany are, as a first step, to apply the energy efficiency first principle using benefit cost analysis to assess the least cost potential of energy storage of all kinds, demand response in comparison to both existing supply side resources and to expanding supply side resources both in generation and in networks. So also in the capacity market to try to give priority to least cost demand side flexibility resources and for power plants to prioritize cogeneration. If necessary, in the intermediate period, create other specific capacity instruments for demand side flexibility. But in any case, to make power prices and grid fees and possibly even taxes and levies time dependent, and to reform the revenue regulations of system operators to better allow them the integration of flexibility costs into network tariffs instead of grid expansion, option 5. So next please. For the discussion, questions we see is on which reform options and aspects Germany could learn from Japan, so probably on capacity markets and vice versa. How can we best give priority to least cost demand side flexibility resources over new power plants in all kinds of capacity markets and mechanisms? And are there other general or technology specific barriers except for the too low revenues from the wholesale energy markets and the static pricing for end users, and what could be done to remove them? Thank you for your attention, and look forward to the comments and to the discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stefan and Mitsuaki, for giving an insight into the results of the first study the Council conducted in the current working phase. So it's really complex, and it is actually, it has been condensed through a scoping workshop before the actual study began, because electricity market design is such a huge topic, and that is why you concentrated on the flexibility options and again on specific flexibility options within this broad topic. So before asking for the comments, I would like to give our audience the hint. Please use the chat to post your questions or comments on this first study, on this first presentations. You can just post to everyone in English or also in Japanese if English is not so convenient for you. And after that, after the comments from the Japanese side and from the German side, we will give you the chance to ask your questions also in person if you want, or we will address the questions that you have posted in the chat. And by the way, we will upload the presentations on the GJETC website after this event, so you can have another look at this complex topic. And the studies, the full studies, are already available on the GJETC website. So I will ask my colleagues to post the link in the chat. So let us come to the comments. I will just leave the questions here on the screen, and I would like first to invite Kenichi Onishi to give his comments. He is executive researcher at IEJ, at the Electric Power Industry Unit at IEJ. And Onishi-san, your main field of study is actually the design of regulatory or market framework for the electricity power sector. So that is your topic, your specific topic. So I'm really looking forward to your comment, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to show my comments concerning the study. So the electricity market design study jointly researched by the Japanese and German teams is very interesting, and I believe that it is important for the realization of the low carbon electricity business that both countries are aiming for in the future. Japan and Germany are expected to increase the share of renewable energy in the generation mix in the future. In particular, solar and wind power plants will be introduced in large numbers, and since these power plants are intermittent, flexible power plants will be needed. These flexible power plants should also be decarbonized. So it will be important to introduce storage batteries, pumped storage, hydrogen and ammonia-fired power plants, and biomass power plants. While investment promotion measures have been introduced for renewable energy power plants through feed-in tariffs and or feed-in premiums. I believe that investment promotion measures for flexible power plants will be introduced in earnest in the future. On the other hand, there are forecasts that electricity demand will increase significantly in the future due to the recent construction of data centers and introduction of electric vehicles and electrification of heat demand in the building sector. While it will become increasingly important to lower maximum power demand through the use of energy efficiency and demand response, etc., I still believe that the large-scale introduction of solar and wind power plants will be essential as power demand increases. And decarbonized and flexible power plants will be increasingly needed to meet this situation. So looking back at history, until the 1990s, Japan and Germany made systematic investments in power plants under a regulatory framework in order to respond to increasing electricity demand and ensured that these costs were recovered in regulated tariff. For this reason, I believe that we have been able to achieve a stable supply of electricity in Germany and Japan, even as electricity demand increases. It is my understanding that since the 1990s, the growth in electricity demand has slowed down and there was a surplus of power plants, leading to the introduction of electricity market liberalization, streamlining and restructuring of electric power industry. However, in the future, we will have to make significant investments in power plants as electricity demand increases, and we will also be required to proceed with the decarbonization of power plants in order to achieve carbon neutral. Also, the electricity industry has already been liberalized, as we now need to introduce a regulatory framework again to encourage investment in power plants to ensure a stable supply of electricity. For example, it is necessary to introduce a capacity market and ensure that capacity remuneration is collected from retail companies or final customers in the form of public charges. Japan held its first capacity market auction in 2020. Furthermore, in 2024, a long-term decarbonized power source auction was held in the form of a special capacity market auction. As Mr. Ota explained, there are many issues and challenges with the capacity market and the long-term decarbonized power source auction. I believe that the government stakeholders and academic experts will examine these issues and challenges in the future and modify them in a better way. In particular, a long-term decarbonized power source auction is a framework in which successful bidders can certainly recover fixed costs. But once the power plants are constructed, there are concerns about whether they can be operated properly or not. I think that further discussion is necessary in the future. Anyway, I believe that that if we could conduct another joint study in the future, including our review of the schemes of decarbonized and flexible power plants introduced in Japan and Germany, we would be able to get even more meaningful results. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Onishi-san, for this comment from the Japanese point of view. Next, from the German side, we will hear a comment from one of the GJETC members. So I welcome Ms. Katrin Goldammer. She is Managing Director at the Rainer Lemoyne Institute, an independent non-profit research institute with a special focus on the transformation of energy systems, mobility with renewable energies and off-grid systems. So Katrin, thank you very much for joining, and we're looking forward to your comment.
Yes, thank you, Johanna, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I cannot see you, but I'm sure that you've tuned into this discussion because electricity markets are a big issue all over the world. And why is this? Well, it's because from my point of view, the technology is already there, right? It's the regulation that will make it attractive or not attractive to use technology in a way that changes the electricity system. And this is, I think, also something that I want to talk about today in my comment. And I'm saying this despite the fact that I happen to be an engineer. So for my training, I should be saying that it's all about the technology, right? We have to develop these new technologies. We have to put most of our effort into this. But I'm actually concluding today that the technology is already there, and it's more about the regulation. And I'm going to give you some context to this about the German energy system because I've worked in it for a long time. So when we look at the tech options that we need, and we heard about so many of them today, I guess you would agree that we have them on hand, right? So for example, power generation has been flexible for a long time, even though the German energy system historically relied on things like lignite coal. We have been putting our effort into flexible power generation facilities. And when it comes to renewable energy, we're not saying anymore that we cannot manage them, right? We can combine them with battery storage so that we can make them more flexible in the future. And everything else that we talked about today, electrolyzers, smart meters that we need for a flexible demand side, these are things that from the technology side, they exist and they're at our hands. But the question is, why are we using them in a very slow manner? Or why are we not using them at all? Or have we potentially used them to the fullest capacity? And I would argue that we haven't, but we don't incentivize their use as much as we could. So where do we come from in the German energy system? Well, I think there are at least two things that are very important to know. So one is that, of course, we're part of the European Union energy market, right? So there is this context where Germany is officially integrating their market into the European market. So we have this huge wholesale electricity market that potentially could be even bigger and bigger. There are some constraints, of course, because not every point in Germany is connected with, let's say, unlimited capacity to every other electrical point in Germany, but we are incentivized by the European Union to hold this and to manage this like a big German and European-wide electricity market. But then when it comes to incentivizing new production in Germany in the parts where we have a lot of load, of course, it would be helpful if the market would not be a single market, right? Because then the incentive is only an average, but it doesn't incentivize point-by-point installation of renewable energy. So this is where the debate comes in for a division of the electricity market to more flexible pricing method, because right now we have only one electricity price for the whole of Germany. And the second thing that you have to know about the German market is that we come from a place of great overcapacity. So when I started working in the electricity industry, which was more than 15 years ago, when you looked at the numbers, the German electricity system was so oversupplied that, of course, it would have been really strange at the time to discuss capacity markets, right? Because the capacity on paper was humongous. And now we've turned the system around in such a way that for the first time now, we're seriously discussing putting up capacity markets again. But I want you to understand that this is quite a paradigm shift for the German system, because when you come from a system of overcapacity, it wouldn't make any sense to even give out more money for those who hold capacities, right? And we come from a place of a very, very good security of supply, which is also a reason for us to be very slow when it comes to thinking into these, how can we incentivize security of supply? How can we make it worth? And what is the correct market system in order to incentivize security of supply? It's just a number that has traditionally been really, really high and very good in the German context. And the other thing that you need to know is maybe that because of this overcapacity, we have traditionally, at least at the wholesale level, had very low, but also not very fluctuating electricity prices, right? And whenever you want to incentivize a system which is very dynamic and very flexible, then of course it doesn't help, right? If electricity prices are very, very smooth. And this is something that is just slowly starting to take up again, because now we have for the first time seen spikes in prices. We've also seen high and very low prices for the first time. And this could be just potentially unlock a lot of flexibility on the tech side from a market side. And this is why I'm very excited about the new steps that are coming ahead. So generally, my main takeaways for you would be that we come from a very smooth and oversupplied market. We're now entering a phase where things are getting shaken up, which could be potentially very interesting. And it kind of combines with a system that is still under the impression of what we would call the energy crisis in Europe, which was caused by the Russian war in Ukraine. And in this energy crisis, I see a lot of possibilities for change, but you could also argue that because the system is already shaken up and people are confused or worried about the energy system, maybe it isn't the right change, the right time for changes. So we're kind of at this point now where it's going to be interesting to see in which way the system goes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katrin, for the meaningful comment on our topic, the first part here. So I've already seen 2 questions in the chat. One was about the topic of self-consumption and self-consumption of and renewable energy power installations. So probably that's referring to those, well, very popular small PC solar panel plants that people are installing on their balconies a lot in Germany in the past months. We have one in our garden as well. And the other question was on, well, the capacity market and centralized capacity market versus decentralized and decarbonized power auction systems. I don't know, Stefan, would you like to answer one of those?
Yeah, about the self-consumption, as we said in the beginning, we did not focus on the need to stimulate investments in renewable energies themselves, because there a lot has been discussed and established already, but about investment in flexibilities. So self-consumption or also energy sharing are sometimes also thought to or suggested to also support the use of storage and maybe also demand side response, but these are then for the optimization of the economic outcome for the consumers themselves, but not for the system or the grid. So not for the market or the system. So we have been discussing how can this be made more system serving, especially also through the options 5 and 6. I'm still trying to understand the questions about the Japanese markets.
Yeah, I know that in the study you were talking about decentralized capacity markets and centralized capacity market. And as Japan now introduced a centrally managed capacity market, there might be some conflict, I understand.
Yeah, I understood that long-term decarbonized power source auctions are also what is in the literature, in the expert literature, called a centrally managed capacity market. Whereas a decentralized capacity market, at least in the German discussion, is understood as a market in which the retail power suppliers have the obligation to ensure capacity, and so they organize a purchasing of firm capacity. But here I understand this Japanese decarbonized power source auctions are also organized by the government or the regulator, and then the capacity is distributed all across the country and paid by everybody. But probably Ota-san can knows better about which character these long-term decarbonized power source auctions have.
That's right. Yeah, please.
Yes, maybe, yeah, as Stefan-san said, I think I also understand the long-term decarbonized power source auction is a part of, is a special auction of the capacity market. So in that sense, it is also the centralized capacity market. So this auction is also held by the, as you said, the government organization called the Organization for Cross-Regional Coordination Operators. But the reason why this auction system was introduced was in the current capacity market mechanism, there are some challenges. For example, only 1 year contract is allowed. So this is not probably, this may not be an incentive for the new power generation investments. So that's why a long-term decarbonized power auction allows for the 20 years contract to facilitate the investments for the long period of time.
Well, I'm maybe what was meant. So thank you for explaining it. Maybe what was meant is whether the question is whether the focus should rather first be on new decarbonized capacity than on securing reserves from existing capacity. So, and if there is a competition in this way of having it in parallel between new and existing capacity, but I think that is then the task of the government and the regulator to analyze how much and which kind of new capacity would be needed, how fast it could be installed, and replace the reserves from existing not decarbonized power sources. And so this is probably more a political decision. And in Germany, we have phased out nuclear power plants. We have decided to phase out coal-fired power plants. So maybe this is also a reason why there is less discussion about capacity market for existing power plants as a way to secure reserves.
Right. So I think the discussion now is actually really focusing on that decentralized and centralized capacity markets issue. And the self-consumption that we had before is also, of course, connected with that. And Mr. Weber said it can be also substantial electricity for small and medium-sized companies. Of course, companies can produce the power they need by themselves from renewable energies and consume it by themselves. So that's also one part of a decentralized capacity, I guess. And there's another question now in the chat. So what is your view on hybrid, so centralized and decentralized capacity market as discussed in Germany now? Maybe Stefan, that would be something you could comment on.
That's a very specialist question, I'm afraid. And I must say I haven't had the time to go into that detail of the recent discussion since we finalized the study.
But we could, I don't know, Andreas, if you're, well, Andreas Löschel is member of the GJETC as well. If you can give a comment from your side, that's also welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the
great.
interesting discussion from Stefan and Mitsuaka. In Germany, there's also some discussion about mixing these both elements of centralized and decentralized markets. Now, and for example, there is in these discussions of the platform climate neutrality electricity system, there is one proposal that, let's say, focuses more on centralized capacity markets for newly built installations and looks more for decentralized markets for the rest. Or there is a discussion that, let's say, assumes that we are using centralized markets for some foreseeable capacity needs, and on top of that, there is some decentralized market mechanism that adds to the central markets designed that was proposed by the Monopoly Commission. So I think that tries to combine a bit the pros and cons of centralized and decentralized markets that you have already highlighted. Now, in terms of can we really make sure that we have no adequacy or that we have no problem in our capacities, and also don't we oversupply? This given political economic constraints, and so therefore there's a discussion about merging these two perspectives. But this is relatively new. And these proposals have been highlighted only recently in this paper that was published last month from the German government.
Okay, I see. I saw that this platform stakeholder dialogue discussed both types of capacity markets, and now I understand that the idea would be that retail power suppliers would be obligated to support themselves probably the demand side or decentralized capacity options, but then that could be combined with power source auctions more for power plant type resources or larger resources. It's an interesting idea, but probably needs more analysis to understand, as you say, whether there is new problems maybe of coordination between these two types of capacity markets.
Yeah, thank you very much. We also had one comment about the bidding process from Christine Wörl now. But I would say if there are not specific further questions, I think I'd like to conclude this first part of our outreach event, which was about the first study, the electricity market design study. So thank you very much again for the presenters, the study teams, the commentators, and also to you in the audience to share your insights and your comments and questions. So we have a short break of 5 minutes now. And after that, at 10:35, which is 5:35 in Japan, we will start the second part of our outreach event on the energy efficiency governance. Thank you very much and see you in some minutes. So welcome back to our outreach event and a warm welcome to those who might have logged in just for the second part of our outreach event today. So in our welcome address, Stefan mentioned that the 2 goals that have been agreed on the international, let's say, agenda, tripling renewables was one of the 2 goals, and doubling energy efficiency was the second goal that also Japan and Germany agreed on too. So that is just exactly what the second study is dealing with, which we are presenting now, the more effective governance of energy efficiency policies. So again, as in the first part, the study team, the German-Japanese study team will first present the results of the study, then we'll have 2 comments, and after that, you, the audience, have the chance to share your questions or your comments on that study. So let us get started with the second part. This time from the German side, it's going to be Frank Labunski. He's researcher in the Energy, Transport and Climate Policy Unit at the Wuppertal Institute, the same unit which Stefan Thomas is heading. And on the Japanese side, I welcome Ichiro Kutani. He's Senior Research Director of the Global Energy Group 1 at IEJ, and also head of the study team on the Japanese side. So you two, I welcome you, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Johanna. Let me start the presentation from my side and share the slide, share the talk with my colleague Frank. Frank, next please. Yeah, thank you very much. We are going to talk about 5 points. First is introduction, and second is a concept of effective governance. What is the effective governance? And the case of Japan and Germany. And followed by the third point, effective policy package for the industry sector. This is a case study for the governance. And the fourth and fifth point is a policy recommendation for energy efficiency and industry sectors. Next, please. Yeah. As you may know, Germany and Japan are already high efficiency compared to other parts of the world. However, this is not enough when aiming to the carbon neutrality by 2045 or 50. And in COP28, the world has agreed to accelerate the speed of energy efficiency improvement to double. And Japan and Germany have to contribute to this declaration. Next, please. So here I want to discuss first about energy efficiency governance and what the governance in Japan and Germany are for the moment. Yes. And first, could you back one? I'm sorry. Yes, right. And here we define the energy efficiency governance as a governance that ensure the achievement of an intended target, especially on the national level. And the governance that ensure the achievement of decided target for energy efficiency of energy in time. So we define this energy efficiency governance as such, and we divided such governance structure in 5 points. The first one is a goal setting, how we set the goal of energy efficiency. And second point is a clear definition of role or the authority and the responsibility of the stakeholders, who should what. And third point is funding, transparency of the finance governance is needed. And fourth is a goal monitoring, the progress, achievement of such governance scheme should be monitored. And fifth, the policy need to be evaluated by that monitoring result. Next, please. However, the barriers for the governance structure is there. One is an economic barrier, such like lack of financial incentives or lack of difficulty to access to finance or high-risk nature of virtual investors. And second point is institutional barriers. Let's say a lack of or the complex legislative procedure and regulatory provisions, or the non-integrated and conflicting policies and targets. They are the barriers in terms of institutions. And third one is a behavior barriers, the social group interactions or the inertia of the behaviors or the lack of a culture of saving. Those are the barrier of the behaviors. So we need to overcome those barriers by implementing effective governance. Next, please. And this is a case of Japan. In my country, energy efficiency law was implemented in 1979, and after that, the several revision has been made in this sector. And this is the basic governance structure in Japan. This law is governing energy efficiency activities in my country. And another governing structure is the basic energy plan. This is in other words, this is a strategic energy plan. And this plan shall be reviewed by every 3 years. So in this plan, we review the current energy efficiency governance structure and the energy efficiency achievement, and implementing the next step forward, what we should do in enhancing energy efficiency in my country. And another structure is an energy white paper. This white paper will be published every year. And in this paper, we will reviewing the achievement of the energy efficiency in last year, and this describing what to do in next year. And as you can see on the right-hand side, here is a coverage of energy efficiency law. Industry sector shared 45% of energy consumption, and the residential and commercial sector shared 38%. And the transport sector 17%. And among the industry sector, 79% is covered, energy consumption is covered by this law. So that almost 80% is covered by the direct regulation. However, in the commercial sectors and the residential sectors, direct regulation only goes to the 61% of a commercial sector. So the most of the commercial sector and the residential sectors are not covered by the regulation itself. And for the transport sector, only 9% is covered by law. So the law coverage is small in transport sector and the commercial and the building sectors. So if we intend, Japan intend to enhance energy efficiency, we need to do something more in transport sector and building sector. Next, please. And this is the similar thing we are saying. The direct regulation covers the mostly for the industry sector and some part of the transport and the building sectors. And there are indirect regulations through the appliances. We set some policies like a top runner program to accelerate the efficiency improvement in appliances. And in addition, we are asking energy supplier to supply information to those consume energies. And also we put the labeling systems for appliances. Those are another governance systems to enhance energy efficiency in my country. Next, please.
I believe it's now my part.
Maybe it's Frank.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let us now turn to the essential policies and governance structures in Germany. and avoiding energy use is the most ecological and cost-effective approach for the energy transition. Therefore, the German government has set itself the goal of transforming Germany into the most energy efficiency economy and is pursuing the goal of efficiency first. As a consequence, energy efficiency is therefore a fundamental principle of the German energy and climate policy, and it's difficult to consider the corresponding policies in isolation. But there are a number of policies and programs designed to ensure the implementation of the energy efficiency first principle, and these include the Climate Protection Plan 2030 and the Energy Efficiency Strategy 2015, which was published back in 2019. And the Energy Efficiency Strategy also includes the National Action Plan 2.0, which contains a catalogue of measures in order to reach energy efficiency targets, as well as the Energy Efficiency Roadmap, which provides a cross-sector dialogue between business and the industry. There are also the Energy Efficiency Act, which contains energy efficiency targets, among other things, and that is what I would like to talk about now. The new Energy Efficiency Act was passed by the federal government in November of last year, and it contains ambitious energy consumption reduction targets. So the primary energy consumption has to be reduced by 39.3% by 2030, the final energy consumption by 26.5%, and the final energy consumption have to be reduced by 45% until the year 2045. And in order to realize this, the law specifies a large number of obligations. You can see a few really particular prominent features here. The energy consumption is to be reduced by 45 terawatt hours starting from this year onwards, and companies with a high energy consumption are obligated to establish energy or environmental management system. And what is also new is that data centers are obligated to use waste heat and they're only allowed to use renewable energies. So in addition to the German energy efficiency policies, we also need to look at the European policies. We have the National Energy and Climate Plan, which represent the national energy and climate policies over 10 years. And energy efficiency is one of the 5 central dimensions here. Financing is also essential for the implementation of policies, and within the framework of the European Green Deal, there are either direct or indirect financing options. As well as the European Energy Fund. And probably the most prominent policy at the European level is the Energy Efficiency Directive, which I assume you all heard of. So this was first introduced back in 2012 and was last renewed in 2023. And among other things, the Energy Efficiency Directive formed the legal basis for the German Energy Efficiency Act. And of course, it contains the EU energy efficiency targets. So the aim is here to reduce the energy consumption by 11.7% by 2030. To achieve this, an annual average energy consumption of 1.49% is to be implemented. And in addition, the obligation of an energy audit is necessary. And local heating and cooling plants must be created for cities with over 45,000 inhabitants. So now that we have looked at the main policies and energy efficiency targets, the question arises as how will this all be implemented in Germany? And you can see here an overview of the institutions and ministries involved in the respective task, and of course the responsibilities with regards to energy efficiency. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, I won't go into detail here, but the message I would like to portray is that in Germany you have very complex institutional settings and a fragmented responsibility in the field of energy efficiency. And this may be one reason why the gap between the ambitious energy goals, which I just presented, and the actual realization have not yet been closed. And I want to show you some numbers. So the implementation gap is confirmed by a look at this graph. So you can see here, shown as the red line, the final energy productivity, which is the result from the ratio of GDP and final energy consumption. And this energy productivity has risen significantly since the 1990s. But of course, we also have to look at the green bars, which represent the final energy consumption. And we can see here that this remained relatively constant over time, even if it had fallen slightly. So if we remember the ambitious climate targets from before, it becomes clear that the implementation of energy efficiency must be increased. So now I will hand over back to you, Kotani-san.
Yeah, thank you very much, Frank. And third point is effective policy package for industry sector as a case study. Next, please. Yeah. And here we summarize the elements of effective policy packages as the energy efficiency investment, I would say, will be implemented through the consumer's behavior or thinkings. Therefore, we analyze the principle of consumer behaviors. The factor that influence the investment decision are the acceptance and pleasures, information, knowledge, and actors. Acceptance means the commitment of the industry, of the company. And the pleasure means the penalty or the inspection or the monitoring that will give pleasure of the company. And information and knowledge might be easy to understand. Information or the knowledge about the technology or the financing schemes. And actors means the qualified personnel in a company, if they have such actors or not. Next, please. And in case of Japan, the annual reporting systems give a big pressure or the incentives for the company. It gives the pressure and incentive for the market effort, making effort. And with this annual reporting, the government will rank the company of this achievement. And second one is a benchmarking. There is a system among the same industry subsectors to benchmarking their effort. And with these benchmarking systems, they can understand their position in terms of energy efficiency among the same subsectors. And third one is award systems. And this will give incentive for the company to make their energy efficiency status better than other companies. Next, please. And third one, the fourth one is the professional engineers. The qualified professional engineers need to be appointed in a company in the designated industry. And it gives the potential or the chance, opportunity for the company to make efficiency investment smoothly. And third one is a subsidy. Government provides subsidy to support such energy efficiency investment of a company. And lastly, the diagnosis support is provided for the company, and such opportunity will give the company to incentivize investment, give incentive for the company to improve their efficiency. Next, please. And Frank, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. So when comparing the primary energy consumption of the German industry and the GDP, we see a similar picture close to the one we have already seen for the final energy in the economy as a whole, namely that the progress in energy efficiency is neutralized by growth effect. So here too, there is a need to increase energy efficiency. So the EU has set itself the goal of a green and digital transformation of the industry, and hereby, of course, energy efficiency plays a central role. So first, the Green Industrial Plan aims to accelerate the transition of a climate neutral industry, and the main elements here are planning certainty, simplified regulation, faster funding, expansions of competence, and an open and fair trade. But there are also other policy frameworks for implementation of the energy efficiency first principle, and these include the Raw Material Act, which is implemented to ensure that the EU has sufficient and sustainable mechanisms for its industry to reduce its dependency on individual countries, and also the electricity market design, like we heard already in the previous presentation. So at the national level, technologies are being promoted that facilitates the transition to a resource efficient and energy efficiency industry. And cross-sector technologies in particular have a funding rate. We have here a funding rate of up to 50%, and for soft and hardware, which is used to establish energy management system or training, we have a funding from up to 15 million with also a funding rate of 50%. And based on the Heat Planning Act, there's a special emphasis on the waste heat usage. So now that we have outlined the current policies and the objectives of Japan and Germany, I would like to talk about possible policy recommendation. And first, a policy roadmap needs to be drawn up. And this one should in particular include the COP targets. Just to remind you, so the annual energy efficiency rate should be reduced by, or should be increased up to 4%, and the renewable capacity should be tripled. And in Germany, we are calling for an increase in the energy efficiency targets and an effective governance in Japan. So in Germany, or based on the German law, we have a monitoring that takes place every 4 years, and we recommend a more regular monitoring, for example, every 2 years to make any necessary adjustments. And one really good example for this is Japan. The monitoring is already annual, but it could be improved if there are KPIs integrated to make this monitoring even more effective. So if you remember, earlier I showed you an overview of the competence and responsibilities of the institution and ministries with regards to energy efficiency in Germany. And here fragmentation in responsibilities could be observed, and this fragmentation leads to ineffectiveness and intransparency. And we therefore recommend the evaluation of a polycentric institutional setting for Germany. And this could include polycentric governance with regional and local agencies, and additionally one-stop shops should simplify the process and just ensure transparency. And the existing institution, such as, for example, the DENA, BFEE, or the KfW, could, for example, be merged into one energy efficiency agency. Of course, the lobby work is important in both countries, so this should be strengthened. And finally, it is necessary to carry out further studies in this area of energy efficiency governance. And we recommend comprehensive bottom-up studies on the potential benefits and cost of energy savings within cross-cutting technologies and for appliance in all sectors. And now I would hand over to you again, Kotani-san, for the general recommendations.
Yeah, thank you very much. Next, please. Yeah. Here are some recommendations for industry energy efficiency. The first one is establish and extend the network of industries to share the information. I learned that there is a system in Germany which is initiated by the BMWK and BMUB to networking the industry to share the efficiency knowledges among the industries. And Japan also has such systems, but most of those systems networks only cover the large companies. So our suggestion is to expand this network to smaller industries and companies so that to enhance energy efficiency in such companies. The next one is the feasibility, improvement of the economics of energy efficiency investment. Tax benefit might be the choice to improve such economics of the investment. Next, please. And third point is the circular economy. If we can reduce the consumption of raw materials, we can reduce energy consumption in processing such raw materials to the product. So the enhancement of a circular economy, circulation of the product or the raw materials might be the choice to enhance energy efficiency. Next, please. And fourth point is a guarantee of the risk insurance for the development of the industry waste heat. We understand that there are lots of waste heat that are wasted to the atmosphere or the water. If we can use those wasted heat, we can improve energy efficiency of the industry. So our suggestion is to improve those waste heat recovery by supporting such investment. And last one is a legal framework definition for the green steel. Both Germany and Japan has a large steel industry, and this constitutes the large economic part of in some regions. And we still need a steel product. So we need to enhance the energy efficiency in the steel industry, and the legal framework and the definition for green steel might incentivize those industries to improve energy efficiency. And this is the last of our presentation, and thank you very much, and we look forward for the discussions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ichiro and Frank, for sharing the results of the studies. So just to some of the recommendations, I think improvement of institutional setting of energy efficiency government, that was one of the key findings on the German side, and need for more bottom-up studies. And on the Japanese side, a need to share more information among industries about their efficiency efforts and possibilities, and also among SMEs, smaller and medium companies, and to enhance circular economy and definitions, for example, for green steel. Now, we would like to invite two comments again from the German side and from the Japanese side. So from the Japanese side, Kutani-san agreed that you will also give some comments. So you share your roles now, not part of the study team, but give a comment a bit from an outside view on the study findings. Please, Ichiro.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to update some revision in our institutional settings in Japan. The first one is a revision of energy efficiency law in April 2023. In that revision, from before that, we asked energy efficiency for the fossil fuels. However, in this revision, we asking that the new law ask for energy efficiency in non-fossil fuel energy as well. So now we have to make efficient use in non-fossil fuel as well. And this is a big change in our institutional systems, and I think this will pushing the carbon neutrality pathway in Japan further in the future. And second point is GX Promotion Act. This defines the implementation of a GX surcharge, which is expected to start from 2028. This is the kind of a carbon pricing. And a new auction system for ETS, emission trading system, will start in 2033. And with those two new elements, we'll further pushing the energy efficiency in society in Japan. And third one is awareness for the people is a key. I think that education is a key to enhance the awareness of the publics. And if we improve the awareness, we can enhance the energy efficiency further in the country. For instance, for the experience for my kids or the education experience in universities, they learn about the energy efficiency and the climate issues, which is different from my age, and that awareness gives a higher incentive for those ages for energy efficiency. So the educational program for younger ages might pushing further for energy efficiency in the country, and I would suggest supporting those awareness program in the country. So this is very short, but these are my comments from my side. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for the additional comments. Now to round off this perspective, we'll now hear a comment from the German side from Christine Wörn. So Christine is a council member of the GJETC, and she's also the founder and managing director of AREPO, a consultant for politicians, organizations, and companies with a special focus on renewable energy, energy efficiency, and sustainable energy systems, to just name a few of the topics you're dealing with. So Christine, please, your comment.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to comment on this interesting study. We all love energy efficiency, of course, but we also know that it has always underperformed. We are looking at energy efficiency targets, and we as AREPO, we are in the business of evaluating trends and policies and programs, and we unfortunately have to state that the targets that we have formulated in the past are not always, or mostly are not reached. And in that sense, I applaud the team to formulate a call for an energy efficiency enhancement rate of 4%. But I think for that we really need very effective policies, which I fail to see so far. But we can say a couple of things why this is the case and where these energy efficiency, these effective policies might be found, or what needs to be kept in mind when designing them. Energy efficiency has often been called unsexy. It's not as kind of popular or attractive as building something new, because what does it do? We need to go into the weeds and change systems that are already operating. There are three things about my intervention that I would like to highlight. The first question is, why is it so difficult to do energy efficiency or to even monitor energy efficiency improvement? The second would be, what makes policies effective in this area? And the third is, what kinds of institutional frameworks do we need for them? Because I was specifically asked to comment on the proposal of a federal energy efficiency agency. So why is it so difficult to monitor? Firstly, energy efficiency is, of course, a relative concept. We are talking about specific energy consumption most of the time per GDP. And this can reduce, so we can reduce the specific energy consumption, but still have absolute energy consumption grow, as one of the comments also pointed out. And this also means, as both are constantly changing, that means that we are looking at moving baselines even if we don't have any policies. The specific energy efficiency is constantly changing, and we know that we already have an endogenous energy efficiency improvement of around 1%, which we assumed already when we did the first scenarios around 2000. And anything that we talk about in terms of policies needs to be increasing this 1%, and in the hope of our team already to 4%. Energy efficiency is a holistic concept. It's measuring not an individual application usually, but the whole sector, a whole consumption chain, the whole value chain, or the whole economy, which makes it much more difficult to understand where energy efficiency policies are effective. And of course, also the job and growth impacts and other secondary benefits of energy efficiency policies are very hard to measure, which again is a kind of a monitoring and attractiveness disadvantage compared to other approaches like renewable energies. So in this section, we would have a call out for studies like for disciplines like environmental psychology, where we need better assessments on what would happen without our policies instead rather than with our policies. So how will our policies influence everyday behavior, but also investment behavior? We also need more analysis in terms of communication effectiveness. What makes a campaign effective versus pointless? These things are not very well researched, and we need more research in this area. But what we know, and what the Japanese example creates quite clearly, is that we need a multi-pronged approach. Financing energy efficiency is difficult. We see in Germany that even industries that know that a specific investment would have a payback of 2 years or less, they will not necessarily take this investment. Tax breaks are a good idea and have been tried in the current German government, but led to a very small and half-hearted effort. But still, we face a mobilization problem in energy efficiency. People are not really, motivated to take the energy efficiency measures that they need. And I was very happy to hear that awareness is an important aspect. I fully endorse that. And my personal barrier systems analysis shows that we also need expertise, meaning we need people who know how to leverage it in practicality. We need motivation. And on the financial side, we need two different kinds of things. One is the affordability, which means we need to have the investment capital to leverage energy efficiency opportunities. And we also need a long-term cost effectiveness. These are two different financial barriers which often are lumped into one, but for policy design purposes need to be made separately. I was happy to note in the Japanese example this effort of benchmarking industries and then also publishing these benchmark results. Very cool concept. It could be considered naming and shaming and thus have a kind of a bad kind of vibe to it. But in fact, we see that many people look towards what does my neighbor do? And then if their neighbor does this kind of thing, they also strive to do the same thing. You could also just call this a positive role of inspiration rather than a negative role of naming and shaming. So I think this is a very good approach, and we should see how we can approach that. So we see that energy efficiency policies, in order to be effective, need to address many things. They need to address motivation, awareness, expertise, and also finance. And this brings us to this question of what should be the institutional approach to leveraging energy efficiency, as the study proposes a polycentric approach and a federal energy efficiency agency which bundles the roles that are currently sitting with the German Energy Agency and the Bundesstelle für Energieeffizienz, BFEE, at BAFA, and also assumes that it would be smart to bundle also the financial aspects which are currently managed by BAFA and by KfW into the same entity. And at the same time proposes that we should stay with the state and local energy agencies. And I think this is this last part is the exactly right approach. We cannot deliver advice, a capacity building, and a local kind of caring for energy efficiency issues from Berlin or from a national level. For that, we need to be on the ground with the people who make the decisions. We need to be approachable every day with a hotline service that tells people what to do and tells that to them at the point in time when they want that information. So local energy efficiency advice is fundamental. This can be through networks, but we also need energy agencies that deliver this advice. On the federal level, the Federal Energy Efficiency Agency needs to support this local advisory service that is provided by the state and local energy agencies, and needs to align it with national policies. This is a two-way function. One is to support these entities, but the other one is also to collect the information on energy efficiency implementation on the ground and feed it back into the policy cycle. And an important approach is also to advise on the availability of funds and finance and feed this back into the financial tools. Now, whether or not this federal agency, so in that sense, I'm certainly sure that the federal agency should include the tasks that are currently sitting with the BFEE at BAFA. Whether or not they should also deliver the financial services would be another question. I know that Dana has decided against doing that for the longest time. And there are institutional reasons for that in terms of its institutional setup, but this is not something that needs to stay that way. The benefit of bundling financial and advisory services in one entity are clear, that the financial services could then react more quickly to the substance of the advice. On the other hand, this might lead to more blind spots than we have currently, and I think on energy efficiency, we need all the help that we can get. We need the multi-pronged advice, the multi-pronged energy efficiency policies need to be fed by a multitude of approaches, a multitude of considerations for a multitude of target groups. And what I'm missing in our proposal is more a call for more mainstreaming, like tying funding services to NGOs or to organizations like Verbraucherzentrale, the Consumer Protection Agency of Germany, tying this to a mainstreaming of energy efficiency consideration. And the last proposal to link energy efficiency with resource efficiency is actually a step in that direction, and we could expand that to other areas. Although the resource efficiency is of course another big construction site for the industry, and might in this kind of generality deter industries from this endeavor rather than make it more attractive. But it's worth a try, and with that I will close my comments and thank you very much for including me in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine, for this very precise and meaningful comment. Now, I would like to invite the audience to post questions or comments in the chat. There are already a few comments, and two of them are referring to the building sector or the housing sector. So pointing out that, well, energy consumption in the building sector is growing, especially in Japan. The comment was pointing out that ZETC and ZEP, so zero emission houses and zero emission buildings are being promoted, and how could these efforts be evaluated? Maybe just a comment from my side. In the council, we have done a lot of work regarding energy efficiency in buildings. There was a big study in the last working phase, or the phase before that even. Then we had a stakeholder dialogue with the industry, and we had an innovation roundtable on energy efficiency in buildings, and especially on renovation and refurbishment of buildings to improve energy efficiency in the existing building stock. So there's a lot of work being done in the council. And I personally found that question on ZETC and ZEP very interesting, because we heard that there's a very good monitoring system in Japan established for the industry, energy efficiency in the industry. And there are concepts or standards for zero emission houses and buildings, but how can those be monitored? And we heard that monitoring energy efficiency efforts and results is quite difficult. Yeah, I would just like to invite the experts to give any comment or response to the questions we had.
Let me respond to the monitoring of zero emission building or housing. I would say it is very difficult to monitor the progress of zero emission buildings, because in Japan, the building of houses in particular is very open to the market. So there is no strict control over whether this is zero emission or not. If there is a reporting system for those zero emission status, it can be captured. But to my understanding, those systems are still weak for existing systems. So if we can improve to capture the system to capture those status, we can do that. But so far, the monitoring of such buildings is, in particular for the existing building, is very difficult, I would say.
Well, in Germany, we have the building passport, so-called building passport, which is mandatory for all existing buildings and also for new buildings. And I think in Japan, something similar has been introduced.
Yeah, but for example, I have my own house, but there is no passport, not registered. So it is very difficult to capture one by one. Each houses or building is very difficult. Of course, there is a system, but 100% registration is very difficult to my understanding.
Okay, I don't know, Frank, do you have any further?
Well, as you said, in this study we didn't focus on the building sector, but in the last study this was the case. So an expert there would be Stefan Thomas regarding the building sector. Stefan, do you want to add a specific comment with regards to the building sector?
Yeah, the building sector is not only about electrification, but also in Germany, especially about the energy efficiency of the building envelope, so heat insulation, but also heat recovery, ventilation. And yeah, that has been a hot debate here last year. And yeah, for the new buildings, I agree to what Johanna said, that we have the energy performance certificates to monitor the actual energy performance of the new buildings and how much of these are zero emission buildings, but and houses. But for the existing buildings, we have regulation that energy efficiency has to be improved if a roof or wall, for instance, is renovated anyway. But the control would be up to the local authorities, and as far as we know, relatively weak control, and also the coverage of the existing building stock with energy performance certificates is also not 100%, because it's only for lease or sale of a building it is required. Also, yeah, only in the future it will need to be updated after energy efficiency renovation. Then we have better means of monitoring. And for achieving it, yeah, it is the task of the government, and the government so far has mainly given financial incentives for energy advice, and then for also for investments. But we just did a calculation and saw that level of investment support is too little for both the thermal insulation and also for the installation of heat pumps for the rented buildings, which is slightly more than half of the building stock in Germany. It's not sufficient to avoid that the total rent, so the basic rent, can be increased after renovation, and the heating costs will decrease, but the sum of basic rent and heating costs is likely to increase somewhat under the current regulation and financial incentives. So this is so the incentive for the landlords should be there, but here it's also there's a need to provide more guidance and support throughout the process of renovation, because many of the rented buildings are in the hands of private small landlords. But for the tenants, it's currently a financial problem. So there is the need to improve the energy efficiency policy package for energy efficiency in buildings further. Strengthening the energy advice and especially the support through one-stop shops, as Frank has mentioned, and also still improving the level of financial support for the investment. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe,
thank you. Yeah.
For the sake of time, I will not touch the transport sector here.
Yeah, right. Of course, that's another big issue, especially in Germany. But if you want to know more about the findings regarding the housing industry and energy efficiency in the housing industry, just refer to our website, gjetc.org, to find the study and the results of the stakeholder dialogues we had. Now, Toyoda-san just posted that there's the case of the UK also. Utility companies are obligated to reduce energy consumption of their customers by a certain percent. Okay, didn't know that. So they need to advise their customers to improve energy efficiency. Yeah, what do you think about these policies? Okay, an obligation for utility companies to reduce the energy consumption of their customers.
So I just answer very quickly. So the point regarding the advice to the customer, I think it's a really important point. I think also Christiana World pointed out that the guidance to the customers is important. So it's not only about the policy, but the implementation. And we have seen that we have really good targets, but the implementation may struggle. So this could be a good point in order to reach the targets we set early on.
Yeah, I also agree. The difficult part of energy efficiency improvement is the SME and the household. And to reach those consumers, it's a good idea to asking utility companies to try reducing the energy consumption in their customers.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not only the UK, it's many member states of the EU who have such energy efficiency obligation schemes. And also in about half of the states of the USA, this exists as energy efficiency resource standards. But in Germany so far, yeah, let's say important stakeholders in the energy market have managed to avoid such policies in Germany. So it is government policies who have to take care of the energy advice and also the financial incentives. But yeah, since German politics seems to be stuck in a dilemma of funding the climate neutral transition, maybe there is room again to discuss such solutions as giving a mandate to energy companies to support their customers in energy efficiency.
Yeah, thank you very much. Christina, anything to add from your side before we close the second part?
Oh no, my thoughts were completely aligned with what Stefan just said about the US and a long-standing experience actually about the effectiveness of policies there. Because obviously if you give a utility obligation to reduce energy consumption or enhance energy efficiency, they will be exposed to penalties. So there's a monetary element already in there. And if you then generate revenue from these penalties, this could be reinvested into a number of potential avenues for energy efficiency. But again, as I said, this has been started in the US already in the 1970s, and some states has been going on for a long time. So there's a lot of empirical evidence about how that could work and operate.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, looking to other benchmarks or examples, best practice examples is always recommended, I guess. So let us complete this second part. Thank you very much to Ichido and Frank for presenting the study and for our commentators. And well, to conclude the session, I'd like to ask Stefan for some closing remarks, your impression of today's outreach.
Yeah, well, thank everybody again for their participation, and especially active participation by some of the audience, and especially also the commentators, as you said, and also thanks a lot to ECOS and the team for organizing this event, and to all the study teams for presenting it, and also to IEJ for co-organizing on the Japanese side, of course. And I think we struggled to present these complex topics in 20 or even 25 minutes. I noticed both teams took five minutes more, but this also shows to me the need to continue the discussion between both countries and within the countries on how these important policy arenas could be enhanced to enable better achievement of the targets. Here, for instance, in the energy market design, as I said, Germany can take a look at decarbonized power source auctions for new capacities that have been started in Japan this year, how they are organized and what is the results. Japan can observe the developments in terms of dynamic or time of use pricing in Germany and other EU member states, and also the application of energy efficiency first principle in the network business, to see how effective that is to stimulate especially demand side flexibility resources. So yeah, in order to not use much more of the time, thanks a lot again, and hope to see you at future outreach events of the GJETC.
Definitely. So thank you very much. I'd like to ask everyone who was on the presenting side to switch on the camera again, to give a big wave to the audience. Thank you very much. So as I said, we will upload the presentations on the website and also the recording of this webinar, so you can also recommend it to those who might have missed it. And we'll enter the next working phase soon, we hope, of the GJETC, and we will address more topics related to these big goals of Paris, of COP28, to decarbonize, to tripling renewables, to double energy efficiency. And we will be glad if you would follow us and take something away from our expertise. So thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye-bye.